Hi, everyone, and welcome this evening. Here we are in January of 2021. It's actually Inauguration Day, and I want to thank everybody for joining us. This is the first SENS Wellness webinar of the new year, and I'm taking a minute to let people log in. And so as they join, we actually had a lot of interest in tonight's topic on sleep, which I guess is not surprising given the events of the last 11 months. So I'm just letting everybody log in before we officially get started. Again, I'm Susan Greeley, the National Director of Wellness Services at Castle Connolly Private Health Partners, for anyone who's not familiar with the SENS Wellness webinars. I want to remind everybody or tell everybody there will be a Q&A at the end of tonight's presentation. So if you have questions, please do submit them in the Q&A and at any point during tonight's discussion and presentation. And I do also like to say that these wellness webinars are intended to educate and support all of our members. And it's my goal to continually inspire and empower people to make positive lifestyle choices and really improve your overall well-being. Now, this resonates with pretty much all of us more and more since the start of the pandemic. So again, here we are in January of 2021. We survived 2020. Welcome, everyone. Okay, it's just after 6:30. I'm going to go ahead and officially start. So once again, I'm Susan Greeley, the National Director of Wellness Services at Castle Connolly Private Health Partners. Thank you to everyone for joining me for this first webinar of the new year. And we'll be talking about the 3 habits that may be wrecking your sleep. I have to say there are probably more than just 3 habits that wreck our sleep, but I'm going to let my speaker dive into that. So I've been just giving a lot of thought to these tough times we've been going through for the last 11 months and how physically, emotionally, and mentally, it has taken a toll on a lot of people's sleep in particular. Overall lifestyle has been disrupted. So that's why I'm very happy to talk about this topic. And in any case, we all know the importance of getting a good night's sleep. And I personally call sleep a superpower as far as your overall functioning and health and well-being. So my speaker tonight, I'm very excited. As you can see, this is Callie Patrick. She is a sleep and wellness coach. And Callie helps stressed out, busy professionals. She helps them learn to sleep better and improve their energy. She's a therapeutic yoga and meditation teacher and a public speaker. I have recently enjoyed talking to Callie on a new podcast that I have launched, and I'll talk about that at the end. So I really enjoy speaking with Callie, and I'm thrilled to have her here tonight. Her business is A Journey into Health, and you can find her at calliesleepcoach.com. You'll see that at the end, Callie, K-A-L-I, not Kelly. And in any case, Callie, thank you for joining me again this evening. It's great to have you. I'm going to turn things over to you.
Okay, great. Well, thanks everybody. And thank you especially to Susan and Sean for having me here today or tonight. I'm going to go ahead and share my slides here. And hopefully you can see those and it's all good. All right, so you see my contact information there. I will, we'll make it available to you as well. But again, thank you so much for joining. I know many of us are experiencing, fatigue with Zoom and being on these calls, but it's so important. I think that we do take the time to learn about how to improve our sleep so we can improve our health. Throughout this talk, I do encourage you to submit your questions in the Q&A box, and I will be asking for your participation in the chat box as well. So, find both of those places in your Zoom if you're not familiar with it, where they are already, and we'll get started right now. So, you're likely here because you already have a concern about your sleep or energy. Or maybe you're just curious about sleep wellness and coaching. And I just want to say you're in the right place if you have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep, if you happen to have an overactive mind at night, This is very common, or you experience any of the other situations that you see listed here. Many of my clients have, done all the things, right? They're good in terms of turning their screens off before bed and doing the sleep hygiene routines. And so, even in that case, you might still be having trouble with sleep. So this webinar is really designed to help educate you about the bigger scope of your sleep and energy issues, and to maybe start to shift your mindset from quick fixes to root causes. And I'll just give a little disclaimer here that if you've had problems with sleep for more than 6 months, I want to be upfront with you and just say that it might take a little more than one webinar to really solve your problem, but hopefully this will give you some new things to think about. So just want to point out, if you were unknowingly doing something during your day that was preventing you from getting quality sleep at night and having great energy, I'm of the mind that I would want to know about it. And that's part of why I give this talk. Just want to give you 2 examples of people who I have helped who have struggled with sleep. One of the, of course, names have been changed here, but I had a client, Kate, who would return from work each day. This was back when we were still going into the office, right? But she'd come home feeling fatigued and like she just needed a 3-hour nap, right? But she wanted to be doing things for herself, right? She wanted to exercise more, wanted to cook herself a healthy dinner, and just didn't have the energy after she put that in to her workday to be able to do that. Another of my clients, she found that she wanted to go to sleep a little bit earlier, but she just couldn't seem to get herself to shut off her mind and get to sleep. And so she'd end up working into the night, which was great when she was working with people, in different time zones. It kind of worked out, but then she'd still have to wake up early and work in her time zone. So she, was really burning the candle at both ends and tired of fighting with herself to try to get herself to sleep. So I'm happy to report that today, both of these clients of mine have moved from what I call fatigue and frustration to feeling rested and energized. And as Susan mentioned, I do help busy professionals like Kate and Vishali learn to sleep better and improve their energy. So this evening, you'll learn between 3 to 4 lifestyle habits, depending on time, that might be wrecking your sleep. So you can start to make some changes and start feeling better. Before we dive into those habits, I'd like to get to know a little bit about you. So again, this is the time to kind of talk in the chat. Can you tell me how many hours you committed to your sleep last night? This isn't necessarily how many hours you slept, but how many hours did you give yourself to sleep last night? And you can type the number next to the answer in the chat. Let me know, did you give yourself, more than 9 hours, 4 to 6? Let me know, how many hours did you give yourself? Okay, 3, I'm assuming, is not 3 hours. It's that 7 to 9 hours. So that's great. Good, good, excellent. Yeah, I'm seeing some number 2s there. So some people in the 4 to 6. Yeah, animals waking us up, like different reasons, right, for being awake, but you give yourself that duration, right? You give yourself enough time in bed, right? Of course, you've all heard that the recommended amount of time for sleeping is 7 to 9 hours. And some research has shown that women actually need a little bit more time than men. So you can make of that what you will. All right, so next question. Did you wake up feeling refreshed this morning? So despite how long you stayed in bed, despite how long you actually slept, the important question is, how did you feel when you woke up, right? You can spend 10 hours in bed, but if you don't wake up feeling refreshed, then there might be a problem there, especially if your sleep is light or fragmented or interrupted. I'm seeing some comments come into the chat. Great. A little bit of this and a little bit of that. The first time I heard somebody use the word refreshed to describe their sleep, I kind of did a double take. I thought they were crazy that was even a possible word for it, right? So yeah, great. Great. Thank you for your comments. And then lastly, and I think most importantly, is getting enough sleep, enough time to sleep, and waking refreshed a regular occurrence for you, right? We all have a night or two here and there where things happen, right? We might be excited about something happening the next day, or we might have some stressors come in, but in general, is your sleep refreshing, and is that the norm, right? Versus being tired as being the norm. Yeah, so I'm seeing some comments come in. Sometimes not consistent. I wish. Yeah, no clue what that's like. Excellent. Thank you guys for commenting. That really helps me see where you're all at. And, I'll just let you know, I've given this talk many, many times, and the answers to these questions are always very consistent. So most people, may have enough time in bed, but the waking up being refreshed, and more importantly, having that refreshed feeling being the norm, as opposed to the oddity, right? That's really what we're looking for. So just to tell you a little bit about me and why I give these talks and do this work, the first 20 years of my career was actually spent in high tech. And after many stress-filled, sleepless nights myself, I changed gears into the current phase of my career as a health coach, specializing in sleep and energy issues. In 2015, I was actually diagnosed with a chronic illness that made it even more difficult for me to maintain consistent energy. So not only do I coach people and am I trained in this, but I also know what it's like personally to have serious sleep issues, and also how much better I feel and function on all levels now that I've figured out how to sleep well. So my mission is now to help other stressed out professionals with complex, busy lives do just that. And I work with people across all industries and work in environments, wherever they happen to be. I especially have success with people who have a hard time falling asleep because of stress and anxious thoughts. And I prefer to really focus on what's most effective, what's practical, and what's permanent. So in other words, I don't do the tips or tricks, right? So if one of your questions is, give me a tip or trick to sleep better tonight, not what I do, because in my experience, that's the fastest way to get nowhere. We'll talk why about that in a minute. Studies keep showing that as a culture, we really do need to reprioritize slowing down enough to rest and get better sleep. You'll see a few reasons why on this slide. Of course, I could create a whole presentation around why we need to start getting better sleep. But in the health category, I'll point out some very common, diseases and conditions that we're struggling with: high blood pressure, heart disease, obesity, diabetes. They have connected poor sleep to an increase in the Alzheimer's protein, right? So if you're looking to preserve your mental capacity as you age, it's really important to be getting sleep in midlife. Of course, we're all concerned about our immune system function at this point in time, right? And, studies have shown that even a single night of short sleep, which people talk about as about 4 hours, can mean a 70% decrease in your immune system function. That's 70%. And I don't know about you, but in this age of, coronavirus and pandemic, sleep and immunity has never been more important. Of course, we have safety issues when we're not sleeping well. Driving under the influence is something we would never do, but we drive when we're sleep deprived. And there have been studies that have shown that to be very similar. And of course, that when you're working or just trying to find your words or, get through your day, that poor sleep is just not helpful in that regard. We're seeing also increased mood and emotional disorders, right? And whether that's anxiety or depression, people not being able to focus their attention as well. So there's lots going on here, and just to raise the importance again of better sleep. But you guys know all that, I'm sure. So I'm going to move us into the lifestyle habits. I'm going to do this by telling you a short story. And I'd like you to even just close your eyes for a moment and imagine yourself in this story, and then see if you can spot the lifestyle habits, and then we'll go through them one by one. Okay. So just close your eyes, imagine yourself in the story, and see if you can pick them out. All right. So let's imagine for a moment that after a long, busy day, you're expecting to sleep like a baby. Yet when you finally close your eyes, your mind starts tackling all the things that feel incomplete. While lying in bed, you mentally review an upcoming conversation and you worry some more about the state of the world. The next morning, you get started later than you like, and you're tired, but you power through any energy lulls you feel through your day, maybe with an extra cup of coffee, a few trips to the cookie cabinet now that it's right there. You whip together dinner later and manage to clean up some. Later that night, you sit down and you're happy to finally breathe and take a much needed rest. But then, you remember you left the laundry in the dryer. So you get up and you finish that one last chore. You want to follow those recommended before bed routines so you sleep well tonight. But whenever you try, you can't seem to just be still or focus. Finally, you decide to decompress while watching some of your favorite TV shows. As you climb into bed, you feel really proud of yourself because you've chosen to take some melatonin instead of having that glass of wine. You sleep soundly that night, so you keep taking the melatonin. But after a few weeks, like those other remedies you've tried, it stops working and you remain awake, tired, and frustrated. So my first question for you in the chat, as you come back and open your eyes, is can you relate to that story? Either all or in part. Sometimes people will write and say, oh my gosh, that entire story resonates with me. It's exactly like me. Other times people say, well, this part, yes, this part, no. Yeah, so I'm seeing a little bit. Okay, great. So keep that coming in. And now, who spotted a lifestyle habit? If you spotted one of the lifestyle habits, go ahead and put that in the chat. We'll see if you've got it. I'll wait for a moment before diving into lifestyle habit number 1, just to give you all a chance to name one. Okay, Simone. I see Stuart mentioning some things. Yeah, that laundry comment, right? Oh, just one more thing. Right? Okay, and you guys all know your screens, right? Which is exactly why I'm not going to talk about it. All right, let's dive into lifestyle habit number 1, which is relying on substances to fall asleep. And this is even if they're natural, and I put natural in quotes. So most of us know, like when you hear that story, you know that ingesting, having the wine at night or the spirit or whatever your cocktail of choice is, isn't the healthiest option. And we usually know that ingesting things for us to stay awake during the day, like caffeine and sugar, isn't the healthiest option. We usually recognize that, right? But when it comes to the substances, we're sort of using some of those supplements or the over-the-counter tools to help us get to sleep, and we think, well, these are better, right? But the National Sleep Foundation and other similar organizations share what many of us already experience if we've tried these, that even natural sleep aids don't cure insomnia, right? Why is that? Well, whether you're taking ZQL or melatonin, you're still attempting to control, and I'll really emphasize that word. You're attempting to control your sleep and your energy using an external artificial substance. Now, melatonin in particular signals to your body that the time to sleep is soon. It doesn't actually induce sleep the way many of us associate it, right? And additionally, I want you to think about sleep by its very nature is actually a surrendering, right? It's about letting go of control. And here we are trying to control it more and more. So for these reasons and many others, over time, this lifestyle habit of taking things can make it more challenging to heal the problems with sleep. Now, as a culture, we love the idea of the quick fix. But months and sometimes years later, we're still going through those same challenges, and we're still spending time, money, and energy on finding that latest quick fix. So I want you to recognize that the only natural sleep is natural sleep. And regardless of the trouble that you may have had in the past, your mind-body system knows how to get refreshing sleep and sustain energy throughout the day. So while it seems counterintuitive, the simplest, quickest path to feeling better permanently is to stop relying on all substances while focusing your attention on finding and resolving the root causes of those sleep challenges. I'd love you to remember that there's no faster fix than getting to the root cause. And I'm sure some of you have experimented with different sleep aids and supplements. I would love to hear more about how they worked or didn't for you. Honestly, I have taken some, and, again, just like that story, for a time, they work, but they're not intended to be necessarily something that we rely on long term. I'm actually going to skip through this little slide here and move right to the second lifestyle habit, just so that we have a lot of time for questions. I am not going to talk about how much you're on your screens and the timing of that before bed, because you guys all know that. But what I'd like you to think about as the second lifestyle habit is failing to release or to reduce excess energy. What is energy, right? And I'm not necessarily talking in like the woo sense of energy, right? I'm talking about energy as drinking from a fire hose of information at work. When I worked in tech, that was the fun phrase, right? That you have all this information coming at you like you're a computer, right? And you have to process it all, right? So this is energy coming into your system. It might be stress acquired from just, day-to-day work that's just coming in, or caring for others. Perhaps you're looking after a team. Perhaps you're caring for aging parents or children. We're all home right now, right? So there might be other responsibilities. One of my clients, in fact, today was talking about, the drama in her family conversations, right? Or being there to support someone else, right? When someone else is venting and you want to be there for them, right? That's their energy that you're taking in. It's stimulation for your system, for your nervous system. It may be the agitating content of the TV show, or even the reading that you do before bedtime. In other words, energy is anything your mind-body system takes in or consumes. This, of course, does include food and drink, but I want to bring your attention to those that are less obvious. And I have a wonderful story about this. I worked with a client at one point who said, I'm doing all the things. I get into bed. I have an actual physical book. It's not a Kindle. It's not an iPad. I'm reading a book. I've got a low light, and I still have trouble sleeping. And I said, well, what are you reading? Well, this person happened to be a history buff, and he was reading about World War II right before bed. And it was interesting because he didn't, this was something that he was really, interested in and fascinated by, but it was stimulating for him, right? Because he was so interested and so connected, right? The topic itself, not necessarily the medium, but even just the topic itself, was keeping him in that state of just being more energized, right? So sometimes we have to be paying a little bit more attention to the content as well as the medium. A person who feels restless at night is often holding on to excess energy. And this excess energy can be stored primarily in the body, right? This is especially true if someone has anxious thoughts. Those two things kind of go together, right? The body and the mind can both be agitated, or one or the other. You can certainly have both, and many people do. Sometimes exercise during the day can be helpful, but it's often not enough to adequately discharge how much highly stimulating energy has built up in our systems throughout the day. And I'd like you to think about it like, just like it's nearly impossible to exercise off a whole day's worth of bad eating, right? You just cannot compensate for that. We usually don't and can't do enough self-care to counteract how much stimulation we're taking in on a daily basis. So more importantly, increasing your awareness of how much of that stimulation is coming in through your daily activities, so you can make some changes about how much you allow in the first place, is one of the best ways to control how aroused or how vigilant or how stimulated your nervous system might be. And this includes looking at those little sneaky areas where things might be coming in, like that topic of the book. Sometimes it's a reorganization of your nighttime routine. I actually had a client recently who she would get nice and tired, down in the living room, pick herself up to go to sleep, and then she would lay out her clothes for the next day and start, preparing for the next day, and then she'd go to bed. Well, what we did was we actually reversed that, right? So she did all her like preparation for the day. Then she went downstairs, relaxed a little bit, went back upstairs. And now she didn't have that, okay, now I have to start thinking again about tomorrow, right? And that woke her up. So sometimes just, shifting the order can make a big difference as well. And, I want to mention as well that, did anybody hear a release of energy in the story I told earlier? That when I asked you to spot the lifestyle habits, right? Our character tried to sit down, right? And I said she just couldn't, or he just couldn't, right? Got up and did the laundry. So what then? Some of this is practice. We actually forget how to rest and how to stop doing. And instead of fighting that, you can meet your mind-body system where it's at. Discharging the excess energy from the body with some gentle movement like yoga or Tai Chi can prove beneficial for a lot of people. And as you might imagine, I do have some techniques for this that can take a whole 5 minutes. If we have time, I can show you one later. But there is that sometimes need to, retrain ourselves to bring the energy down, because we're just not used to doing that, right? We're used to going all the way up until bedtime. And so then we expect to just drop off, and it doesn't quite happen that way. So I'm going to move on to habit number 3 now, actually, I'm going to pause here for a second because I didn't show this slide and it's important. So this stimulation that I'm mentioning, this energy that grows and grows throughout the day, right? I'll describe this also as vigilance, right? So anytime that we're overstimulated, we're hyper aroused, right? The vigilance grows and we're just amped up, right? That's just the way to think about it. We have sleepiness on the other side, right? And vigilance will always outweigh sleepiness. So you might feel tired for a while, but if that energy is just high in your system, it's always going to be a barrier to sleep and to that feeling of just being able to rest and relax and surrender. So I'd like you to think about rest and being able to relax as a prerequisite for sleep, right? Sometimes we think rest and relaxation is a luxury, but it's not. It's required for you to be able to sleep and to stay asleep, right? Both fall asleep and stay asleep. All right. So third habit, I'd like you to consider this question for a moment, and you can type in the chat yes or no. Have you ever looked at the clock at 3 a.m., and I'm using 3 a.m., right? It could be 2, it could be 4, and wondered, how am I ever going to get through my day tomorrow? If you've ever done that at some point in the middle of the night, yeah, I see the yeses coming into the chat. Yep. And there are other things that come up in the mind, right? But that's the comment, right, we make to ourselves when we're up. Now I'd like you to consider, have you ever looked at the clock at 3 p.m. and thought, how am I ever going to sleep through the night? I'll give you a moment. Of course not. Yep, again, very predictable. Oh, I see some yeses. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. Most people will relate to the first question and say, yes, I do that. I've woken up. I've said, how am I ever going to get through the day? Usually people cannot relate to the second, right? They cannot say, yes, I have paused in my afternoon and considered, how am I going to sleep through the night based on what I've done? And herein lies a problem, right? We think a lot about sleep challenges as nighttime problems. But for many of the clients that I work with, the sleep challenges they encounter at night have root causes in how they're living their days. So again, when we focus solely on tips and tricks or bedtime routines about how to get better sleep at night, we can have at best limited or maybe short-term success. And I don't want you to get me wrong here. Sleep hygiene and bedtime routines are very, very important, but they are foundations for good sleep. And they're often not the only thing that's needed to improve it. So if you don't have good sleep hygiene habits, you don't have that foundation, certainly doing those things and starting to do those things on a more consistent basis is going to help you. And there still may be things that are missing. So if you've done all the things, right, I often hear people say, I've tried everything. right? Then that's where it can be really helpful to start looking into how you're living your days, right? And to make some changes there, which is often easier said than done, right? Our culture has an always on, I'll sleep when I'm dead kind of mindset, which is not just incorrect, but is also dangerous for our health and the safety of those around us, as I mentioned in that earlier slide. We ignore and we can power through those natural energy lows we experience during our days. Sometimes we use substances like caffeine or sugar. Some people just use sheer willpower to keep going. But this mindset and this behavior has what I call an unwelcome side effect. It actually trains your mind-body system out of being able to relax. And that makes it so much more difficult for us to rest and to sleep when we finally want to. To consistently get refreshing sleep, one of the things we need to start doing is to really take into account the other half of our day-night cycle. We need to make some changes to honor and support natural ebbs and flows of energy throughout the day, right? It is not normal to have high energy all the way through your day, right? It's going to be more like a wave where we go up and down. And I call this rest rhythm, right? Where we go with that flow and we support that. And we change, maybe what we do or how we recharge in those moments. One of the big symptoms of a disrupted rest rhythm is when people wake between 2 to 6 a.m. and their anxious working minds won't let them get back to sleep. And this is particularly dangerous because it's during these early morning sleeping hours where we ideally spend more time in that REM stage of sleep. So if you get awake here, if you wake up at this point, you're not just shaving a few hours off your sleep duration, you're actually shaving a more significant chunk off your sleep quality. And this is why we can wake up feeling really just tired and exhausted, even though we may have felt like we slept. Now, I'll reiterate that you won't find the root cause of this problem in that 2 to 6 a.m. time window. It's a symptom of the daytime rest rhythm disruption. And it's often why no amount of talking yourself out of worrying or thinking or being in that awake, vigilant state really helps. The early AM waking can also be influenced by failing to discharge that excess energy that we mentioned earlier. So how do we go about restoring rest rhythm during the day? More detail than I can go into during this webinar. If we have some time, I can show you one of the four fast ways that I know of to reset your rest rhythm. Generally, the techniques that I recommend can be done in 5 minutes. I do share that in my Sleep Academy and in my coaching with people, and I hope you'll look into that later, but do know that it's possible. And we've covered 3 lifestyle habits already. As Susan mentioned, there are many more. Susan, do I have time to share a bonus habit?
Let's quickly share a bonus habit and then I'll get into the Q&A. Okay, Callie?
Right, sounds good. This one, I'm glad you said that because this one could be a real eye opener for people who struggle with stress and have trouble getting consistently refreshing sleep. Now, while the quality of your nighttime sleep is certainly a factor in daytime exhaustion, what many people don't realize is that when they're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, their breathing changes. I want you to pause for one moment and notice what your breath is like right now. And you can share this in the chat. Options: short and shallow, long and smooth, or I was holding my breath and didn't realize it until you asked me the question. Or anything else. What do you notice about your breath right now? Sometimes when you watch, it changes. Yeah, so we're getting a mix. Anybody holding their breath? I see a lot of shallow, short, some relaxed and deep. Good job, Mary.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, somebody noticed about their teeth. Yeah. So, for many people who live in a state of chronic low-level stress, and I actually have been upping that to medium-level stress because of what we've been living through recently, that short, shallow breathing becomes a pattern. And these breathing patterns alter the exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide in the body. They can lead not only to lethargy, but also to anxiety, depression, headaches, and poor concentration. That's even for the best sleepers. In other words, improper breathing can create a physiological feeling of fatigue during the day. And I want you to recognize that feeling fatigued is different than being sleepy, which is why sometimes naps don't work. I get a lot of questions about naps. I'm sure there are probably a couple. But at night, this pattern of breathing, the short and shallow breath, makes it difficult to take the long, smooth breaths that are actually necessary to cue that relaxation response, right? That counters the stress response in the body and helps you surrender to sleep. So relearning how to breathe properly can have a significant impact on your energy during the day, your overall health, and your sleep at night. And you've likely heard that taking deep breaths is good practice, but when you're buried under a ton of stress or energy, or you're already feeling weary, it can feel really difficult to make yourself take a deep breath. And in these cases, it's useful to work with somebody who can help you really incrementally retrain the muscles responsible for breathing. Like any other muscle, they get out of practice. Right. And this is another example of meeting your mind and your body and your system where it's at, right? We don't want to force a deep breath, but we want to start to move it in the direction where it starts to work better for us, right? And with a fuller, deeper breath throughout the day, you might notice that your energy levels actually remain higher and more consistent, even in the afternoons, right? That time of day where we start to get that slump. So just in sum, here's a brief look at the 4 actually lifestyle habits that you've learned about tonight. All of these are trainable, and sometimes it just requires a few small and appropriate tweaks to your day. Before we get to questions, which of these habits did you relate to most? You can type the number in the chat, corresponding number. Some people, usually will say, oh, a couple of them or all of them. Go ahead and type in. If none of these resonated with you, type 0, because that's useful to know too. As Susan mentioned, sleep is a complex process. The challenges manifest differently in each person. So any one or a combination of these things could be contributing to your poor sleep and impacting your energy. There are so many others, right, that I could have done at least 7. I chose the ones that I work, see most commonly when I work one-on-one with clients. Yeah, so I see a lot of different numbers there. Establishing healthier rhythms often requires setting and maintaining boundaries with ourselves sometimes, right, to put down that phone, and with others, right? So, it can be very challenging when most people we see are living a lifestyle like ours. We start to normalize these behaviors, ways of thinking and being, and that keeps us stuck in a cycle of that hyper arousal, anxiety, poor sleep, low energy, and that leads to poor health. But I assure you that ignoring your natural rhythms is not normal, and that you can retrain yourself to feel better than everyone else in your professional or social circle. I do invite you to visit my website. Again, as Susan mentioned, it's kalisleepcoach.com. It's Kali. Be happy to talk with you more in a free clarity call. You can access resources there like my Sleep Academy and learn more about coaching. And at this point, I will turn it over to Susan to facilitate questions.
Thank you, Callie. Thank you. There are so many questions of my own, so I'm going to cover the ones that are coming in, and then I'm probably going to ask a few too, just to tie it all together, because I think you brought up so many habits, as was the goal tonight, that are impacting people's sleep negatively that they don't think about, and really focusing on the root cause. So I'll tie it all back to that. One question though that we talk about when you're trying to get to the root cause is this idea of sleep hygiene, and people hear that, but can you define it?
Yeah, so I mean, in general, sleep hygiene, when you Google it, you'll get a lot of information about things to do either in that 1 to 2 hour window before bed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Things like get off your screen, make sure you've eaten, your dinner at a proper time, right? Start to unwind, like take a nice hot bath, do these things, right? And again, a lot of them focus in that 1 to 2 hours leading up before bed, right? Some of the articles that are out there will talk about exercise during the day. They'll
Right.
talk about light a little bit, right? And these are all things that are designed to keep your circadian rhythm healthy, right? To keep that rhythm through your day
Right.
happening, right?
Right.
And so many times, we just don't do them, right? We're working through lunch, for example. Many people do that. We don't get outside. We don't get for our exercise. So again, those practices are very foundational and they're very important. But sometimes I'll work with people. I get many of the cases that are more challenging, right? Where, hey, I do that, right? I get up at the same time every day, right? I shut off my phone and I'm still having trouble. So that's where some of the root causes and the deeper dives into the day can really, really be important.
Right. I think thinking beyond that, and I hear that a lot as well. I'm doing all the right things, right? That comes up with diet, with all of these pillars of wellness, in other words. And so it's not always obvious. It's not
Exactly.
necessarily right about.
Exactly. And that's what I help people with. It's like you become a detective a
Yes, you
little
do.
bit, right? You get to
Right.
learn, okay, let me look at my day and see where are all these areas of stimulation, right?
Mhm.
Where are these things that I'm doing that are
Mhm.
sabotaging, the best sleep hygiene routine, right? That
Right.
that you have that are just they're working against each other, right? And often, my clients will say, I didn't realize it was so many little things.
Exactly. It is the little things. And so, by the way, there are so many questions coming in, so I will try to get to all of them in
Yeah,
some
I
sort of
know.
logical manner here. You brought up the word rhythm, though, and I love that. And I know you use it in multiple ways. And one thing that I want to just touch on and have you bring up is diet rhythm. And you and I had talked about that a little bit, but I think it really is very important when we're talking sleep, your overall lifestyle of the day. Can you mention diet rhythm, which hasn't come up yet, but people
Yeah,
are
and
asking about
I
diet.
actually, yeah, I usually refer to this as eating rhythm, right?
Yeah.
Because diet has that,
Sorry. Yes. Eating.
yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, we,
How you eat. How,
we
when,
want our way of eating. And when we talk about rhythm, right, we're talking about these touch points throughout the day where our system learns that something predictable is happening. I think we all have learned how stressful and energy producing it is when you don't know what's happening next, right? So when we have these touch points throughout the day, for example, an eating rhythm where we always have breakfast at 8 in the morning, lunch at noon, dinner at 6 o'clock, right? And whatever times those are, right? For different people it might be different, but we have that predictability of, okay, we're always going to do this, or most times we're going to do this. It actually serves a function other than nourishing our system, which is great in terms of food, because obviously we need to do that to also replenish our energy. But it's also that predictable occurrence that is soothing to your nervous system. That is anti-anxiety right there,
okay.
right? So,
Right. That's
so
soothing.
it's, you're not just cheating yourself necessarily out of a break or a meal, but it's also, you're not giving yourself that calm, reassuring predictability of that time.
Mhm. Interesting, because when you talk about that hyper arousal, and I don't think that it occurs to people that um, expected food at that time can actually be soothing. People don't think of food as soothing necessarily. They're thinking of it as giving them energy and, for various
Exactly.
reasons. But I love framing it in that way for people to understand. So the predictability of it is very important and
Mhm.
also calming and soothing. Um, okay, so that takes me to a question of this hyperarousal.
Yep.
It's something, and you answered melatonin, and I had a couple questions about that. And I think people, if you weren't listening, that's in the quick fix category for the most part.
Yeah.
You're more than welcome to try it. As in any case, how about your thoughts on CBD oil or
Yeah.
CBD?
And
It can be taken as capsules. It could be oils.
yeah. And that's the new melatonin, right? So, I always try to think about what's a Band-Aid, right? And what's what's a long lasting solution, right? And, things like melatonin, or CBD or gummies or any of that, they're fine in an acute situation, right, of insomnia, right? There's a health crisis in the family. There's extraordinary stress. And for, a couple of nights or for maybe a week, someone needs help to get them through, right? But what I'm seeing out there, and I'm sure you're seeing it too, is that I can't go to bed without.
Correct. When it
Right?
becomes
And it's months and years. And what happens is we get habituated to this,
correct.
and then we need more, right? And I cringe when I see sometimes on social media, people struggling with sleep. Oh, my sleep is terrible. What do you take? I take this, I take that. I've taken this, that, and it just goes on and on and on and on.
So
Right?
talking about your breathing exercises, right?
And we're not seeing any solution with all these things that we're ingesting. So, for a very short amount of time to get somebody over a hump, sure. That's actually their intention, right? Melatonin for jet lag, fine.
Yes.
Right? But this continuous reliance and use on something, that's where I'm saying that it's really not going to create the long-term effect. And that can be CBD, like CBD is the new melatonin, right?
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Acute and anything, right, needs to be treated differently than when it turns into that chronic habitual state. And I think just to differentiate, no, that's very helpful. Thank you. So there are a lot of questions coming in about napping, and it's anywhere from like, is 20 minutes okay? I fall into an hour and a half. Can you talk about the afternoon nap now for those? Because as we saw, so many people want to get the 9 hours every night and end up waking up not refreshed, need that nap. So what are your suggestions on either, taking naps, not taking naps, getting back into a normal rhythm after a nap?
Yes. So I have a whole blog post on naps. It's called Whether to Join the Nap Club, because again, that's become fashionable now. And again, the reason behind taking the nap matters, right? So is taking a daily nap a Band-Aid for not addressing getting to bed at a reasonable hour? For example, right? The people who work. Oh, I didn't get a good night's sleep because I didn't give myself enough time in bed. So I take a nap during the day. Well, you're using the nap to compensate for not fixing the night, the problem of you not setting boundaries with your work, right? So at that point, the nap for me goes into the Band-Aid quick fix category, right? We're not addressing the root cause. Now, if someone is, I saw some comment fly by about chronic pain, right? Which I have also suffered from, right? That can do a number on your sleep, even when you're doing all the right things, right? So in that case, okay, you're not getting a good night's sleep, then, the nap becomes, a necessary addition to the day, right? And taking that time, it's not like, oh, I'm not avoiding the problem, right? I'm using it as a supplement to help me feel better, to go with that, maybe that time of day, like right after lunch where the energy goes down, right? To lay down for, a half an hour or some period of time where that becomes a rhythm, right? Every day. It's not just the days you feel tired.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's a consistent behavior. Your body expects it. It learns this is the time to come down and rest. And the timing of the nap, like the duration of the nap, does matter, right? Sometimes when you take a nap, you might wake up feeling more groggy than when you started. And then you're like, well, why did I take a nap? Right? And that has to do with the stages of sleep, right? Are we allowing ourselves to drop into a full cycle of sleep where we're hitting REM, right? Most naps, if we're doing it in early afternoon, should only be in those like top 2 tiers, right? We shouldn't let ourselves sink down. It's just a light rest, right? Because when we sink down, we're either going to wake up feeling more groggy or you're going to have trouble sleeping the next night. And then we're going to get into that cycle, right?
Right.
So there's a lot of different things to consider, right? It's not just to nap or not, right? It's like, why am I doing it? What is it? What purpose is it serving? Am I doing it consistently? And what am I, where am I letting myself get to here?
Okay. So what I'm hearing is if you are a napper or need it in a short one, I'll give you my tip, and which is to set a timer, 15 to 20 minutes. I personally am a big fan of the power nap, and I think it can be very effective. So that's my little 2 cents on that. Just for time's sake, because we have so many questions still coming in, Callie. And on a very, very common issue is the waking up at night, the not falling asleep. Many people fall asleep fine. It's
Mhm.
that waking up every 1 to 2 hours, multiple times during night, needing to use the restroom, the bathroom during the night. How can you help people then calm their thoughts and get back to sleep? Because that's really what's
Right.
going on.
Right. And it again, it depends on the specific person, right? The reason they're waking up. Of course, we want to rule out any medical issues, with their, trouble with sleep apnea can wake people up, trouble with bladders. These are things that obviously we want to check out from a medical perspective, right? But then the question becomes, okay, when I'm woken up by something, right? Could be a pet, could be a noise, the mind just starts going. Right. And there are, there are techniques that you can use while staying in bed. I know a lot of the newer behavioral therapies will talk about, oh, if you're not asleep in a certain amount of time, get up and get out of bed. I actually don't recommend that because standing up is just,
Wake you up.
you're just waking yourself up. Right. So, I think the biggest challenge in that case is that what do we tell ourselves when we wake up, right? It's not usually an observation, right? So, for example, an observation would be, oh, I'm awake, right? But that's not what we say. We say, oh, I'm awake. Right? There's that anxiety of, why am I not sleeping right this minute? And when this, there's talk, there's self-talk, and I'm
Right.
actually going to be releasing a new workshop on this, right? There's the self-talk that creates sleep anxiety,
Mhm.
which again is that hypervigilance. It's that pressure to sleep, which does the opposite. Yeah, like, oh, I'm awake again. Yeah, I see that. Right. So there's that. How do you talk to yourself when you wake up? Right. What energy do you give that? Right. Is it, oh yeah, okay, I'm awake. Interesting. Right. And then you can
Just
do
observe
things
it.
like
Right.
oh, I'm nice and comfy and warm in my bed. Right. But we don't do that. We go, why aren't I sleeping? So
Right.
changing the self-talk, being a little more compassionate is one thing. Now, if your mind starts going into work and
Mhm.
worry, then that's a deeper exploration into your day. Like, how are you not processing those things during the day so that you're not carrying them into your night, right? So two kinds of thoughts, right? The like, I'm still working and worrying, and then the sleep anxiety on top of it. And many people have all of those, right?
Exactly.
So then that's where we start to tease that apart in one-on-one coaching.
I
And
just want to say, and that's where this isn't in one webinar, like you said, you're not going to necessarily solve, year-long sleep issues. However, thinking in these terms of there are permanent and, you know, solutions that get to the root cause, I think really is the main thing for people to start to become aware of and how to tackle it.
yeah,
We still have, I just want to be conscious of time here. We have about 5 minutes, Callie, and quite a few questions.
yep,
So kind of piggybacking just on more, other lifestyle habits, exercise and eating. Again, what should people avoid or do as far as how late to eat and exercise? So in other words, is exercising at night bad? I think we all know that eating too late doesn't really help people sleep, even though some people think it does. And same with the alcohol, like glass of red wine, little food, exercise. So I tied a whole lot in there, but if you can touch on all those.
right. And so in terms of the eating, I want to go back to the rhythm for a moment. Most of how we do things in general is, people will. I know a lot of people who skip breakfast or just eat a little breakfast, have a little smoothie, something quick, right? And then
Right.
lunch, we might be trying to be good, right? The salad,
Don't
right?
eat.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, by the time we get to the dinner, we've essentially starved ourselves throughout the
Yeah.
day because we're putting out all this high energy. And then we end up eating more in the evening. I mean, this is a classic, binging, overeating kind of pattern, right? Where we're trying to be good, or we just forget because we're so busy and we just don't make the time for it, right? So
Right.
more of the consumption of the food, of the energy comes in late at night, right? So
Right.
generally speaking, 3 to 4 hours before bed,
Hmm.
food is done. Right.
Right. Exactly.
Maybe a little, snack. I mean, you certainly don't want to go to bed with a rumbly stomach and having that keep you awake. But
Right.
you don't need to go to bed full, and you shouldn't really be, because those digestive processes are active processes, right? You can feel those happening, and that's when we feel the body as just awake. The mind can be calm, but the body is working, right? So it's really important to kind of to smooth out that rhythm, to make sure you're getting those meals throughout the day and not just letting it all move to the evening, right? So if you think about your bedtime, and I have mentors who are like, hey, last sleep train leaves at 10, and there are reasons for that, like Ayurvedically, and that you actually get better quality of sleep from 8 hours from 10 p.m. is different from 8 hours from midnight.
Right.
Right. And so, that's a whole other conversation.
Exactly.
But if you think about last sleep train leaving at 10, that means, 4 hours ahead, right? That's earlier than many of us eat dinner.
Right. Absolutely. 6 p.m. Unless it was that way growing up in my household, but that doesn't happen nowadays. People are working later. There's
Yep.
just so much going on in most people's lives that to have dinner all said and done by 6 p.m. and in bed by 10 p.m. doesn't happen for a lot of people.
Right. Right. And
So
if you want me to go to the exercise
yeah,
question,
quickly. Exactly.
certainly I see two really good windows for exercise. And again, it comes down to what we mean by exercise, right? I'm
Right.
thinking of exercise as a, more strenuous, running, cardio, kind of strong yoga, right? Not relaxing, restorative kind of yoga, right?
Mhm.
Those types of exercise, generally speaking, better in the morning to get you going, right? Or potentially in that like afternoon time, right? I've noticed myself walking more at 3 o'clock, like around that time, that 3 p.m. window, right? When I
I
said, oh, what
recommend.
are you doing?
Yeah.
Right. I feel a little tired. Well, I'm going to go outside for a walk and replenish with light, right? Because
Exactly.
again, we hear a lot about that too, right? So
Mhm.
so those two windows for those more active types of exercise. Now, certainly if you're doing a gentle yoga practice or a tai chi or a qigong or something like that, then yeah, before bed, sometimes that's really great, right? So again, it depends on what type you're doing.
Mhm.
But a strong exercise, hopping on the Peloton, at 9 o'clock at night, probably not going to help.
Right. That's what I say. Don't rev yourself up and expect yourself to then go to sleep.
Yeah, and there's a difference between exhausting your body
Correct. And that's a big
and
distinction, right?
exactly. Many people think, oh, I run and I sleep better, but it's a partial, like it's almost like you're sedating yourself by just exhausting yourself. It's different than sleepiness and sleep.
Exactly. And like you said, releasing energy of the day and mentally releasing and letting yourself drift off into sleep, which I hope we all do this evening. Um, just because of time, I'm going to tell everybody that you will be receiving the slides, and we do also email out a recording of tonight's webinar to everybody. So do look out for that. Last couple, like very quickly, Callie, because I don't want to hold people too late. So I'm like, which one to ask as a final one? One that I like, I just think like when it comes to maybe helping themselves, two actually. Okay. Can you speak to good posture and breathing techniques? Like does that impact it? And then do you also recommend keeping a sleep journal for people to pinpoint any of their, bad habits or issues?
Um,
And
so
that,
in terms of the sleep journal, like everybody's doing the trackers now, right?
yeah.
The Fitbits and
Or
the
yeah.
yeah. So in terms of tracking sleep, I also have a blog post on that, so you can head over to my
Okay.
website and check that out.
Nice.
But it's like, are we actually getting more information right? Or do we start to become sort of attached and create anxiety around the thing we're tracking,
Right,
right?
right.
And, very similar again with tracking food, right? For some people, that's very helpful as information if they're not aware of how many calories they're taking in, right? So if you're not sure how much time you're giving yourself for sleep, or you're curious about it, then that can be very good information. But if you're just wearing it every day and going, oh, my sleep
I
is
didn't sleep.
terrible, or what's happened to a lot of people I know is that what they see on the device doesn't match how they feel, right? And so the numbers, it's like stepping on the scale. Do you feel good, or do you care about the number? Right? And certainly we want, I think we want to feel good, and so the number doesn't necessarily matter. So again, the sleep trackers can be useful for some people if they're looking to answer a specific question. Why are you gathering the data?
Right. What are you going to do with that data?
Yeah. And if not, you're putting your energy into that when you could be putting your energy into, getting through the day, or
Right.
looking at what the real problem is, right? Sorry, you asked another question about posture.
Posture and breathing, and we'll end it with maybe if you want to give one last tip or technique on breathing, because you had said that, and then we'll call it.
Yeah, well, I see there are still lots of people on the call, so I'm going to stay on for a minute and teach you a very quick and simple breathing
Love that. Okay.
Simple breathing technique. So I'm going to hold up my hands so you can see them. You can rest your hands in your lap with your palms facing up. Right? That's all you need to do, but I'm just showing you my hands, okay? You're going to bring your thumbs to the base of your index fingers like this. And when you inhale, you're going to slide your thumbs to the tips, just making an okay sign. And when you exhale, you're going to slide back down. And then you're going to move to the middle finger. You're going to do the same thing. Inhale, slide up. You're not changing your natural breath. You're just, going with your own breath. And then move to your ring finger. Do the same thing. Slide up. Exhale, slide down. Pinky fingers last. Breathe in, slide up. Breathe out, slide down. Do the little finger again. And then move back down the finger. So you'll go back to the ring finger. And when you get back to the index finger, that's one round. All right. So if it's comfortable for you, close your eyes and continue for another couple rounds, just for another minute or so.
Love it if people are doing it.
Yeah, you should do it too, Susan.
I did the first round.
Yeah, do more so everybody can focus. So again, you're not changing your natural breath. You're just sliding up in time to your inhale, sliding down with your exhale. When you get back to the index finger, please do one more round, just one more. And as you're still moving and breathing, this is a finger breathing technique. It's called Nyasa. There's lots of variations of it. This is the one that I always recommend and I always teach, because as I already saw in the chat, I will fall asleep if I do another round.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. And this is one of those things that you can do anywhere, anytime, meaning you go to take a nap in the afternoon, you're not falling asleep. Guess what you can do? You're bringing down that vigilance, right? You wake up at 3 a.m. What can you do while lying on your back in bed? Right? This is one of these 5-minute tips. This is on my YouTube channel. If you forget how to do it, I know Susan's going to share all the links. Of course, this is also it's on my website, right? You can hook up with the social media on there, but this is one of the
Mhm.
really fabulous breathing techniques. And you may notice that as you do the different rounds, your breath will lengthen. It will smooth out, but you're not making that happen. You're just breathing in time with the natural breath. It evolves into something, right? More restful.
Thank you, Callie. I think it's very effective, and we're going to end with that, with people having experienced it. And I really hope that's a wonderful takeaway, because I know for myself and for you, in that middle of the night when people are very anxious, the worry, the minds are racing, a breathing technique like that is effective. And on that note, I want to, wish everybody a good night's sleep, not just tonight, in general, and to thank everybody for joining us. I'm really excited that we've had so many people tune in tonight, and I love the community of it. I think they learned a lot from you. I think you have such valuable, helpful solutions to sleep problems, Callie. Wonderful having you. Again, it's calliesleepcoach.com, correct?
Yeah.
And again, everybody will receive the slides and the recording. And if you are interested, you know how to reach out to Callie now as well. And for me, from your director of wellness services at Castle Connolly. And don't forget, we also have the health coaching for all of our members. And finally, I mentioned at the beginning, but I want to talk about the Sense of Wellness podcast that I've just launched. I had Callie as a guest, and I truly loved our conversation. So stay tuned for that as well. And thank you all again for being here. Callie, it was wonderful.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed being here, and thank you all for your participation and for hanging in there for the whole hour.
Thanks again. Okay, have a great night, everybody, and stay safe. And it was a very peaceful inauguration, by the way.